6 months had changed everything. The Galactic Council chamber on the capital world of Centrum was packed. Representatives from every major species crowded the massive circular room. Torvan military leaders stood in their sections, armor polished and weapons ready. Vexthul corporate executives occupied the trade quarter, their faces tense. Elysian scholars filled the academic section, data pads in hand. Everyone was talking, everyone was scared, and everyone was watching the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The display showed the edge of council space, and just beyond that edge, hanging in the darkness like a promise or a threat, was the Exodus fleet. Byung-ho, the council arbiter, called for order. His voice boomed through the chamber's amplification systems. The situation is clear. The humans have returned. They have 100 warships, 300 generation ships, and millions of personnel. They are demanding the return of their former territories. Young-soo stood up, his forearms gesturing angrily. This is insane. We cannot negotiate with them. They abandoned those territories 600 years ago. We claimed them legally. They have no right to demand anything. They have 100 warships that say otherwise, a Vexthul representative pointed out. 100 old warships, Young-soo countered. Relics like that piece of junk at HFY. We have 3,000 modern vessels. We outnumber them 30-1. Subin stood up from the scholar section. Over the past 6 months, she had become humanity's unofficial spokesperson. She had spent countless hours communicating with Hana, learning human history, understanding their perspective. Admiral Young-soo forgets that the piece of junk at HFY held an entire military fleet at bay for 6 months, she said calmly. 1 ship, 1 AI, against 6 of your best warships. Who won that confrontation, Admiral? Young-soo's face darkened, but he said nothing. The memory still stung. For 6 months, Hana had controlled HFY Station. She had been polite, reasonable, but absolutely firm. Nobody left without her permission. Nobody touched her ship. And any attempt at force was met with immediate, precise demonstrations of her weapon systems. She had never fired at a living being. She didn't need to. She had simply destroyed unmanned drones and weapon emplacements with such accuracy that everyone understood. If she wanted them dead, they would be dead. The humans are requesting a meeting, Byung-ho announced. Admiral Sang-woo wishes to negotiate the terms of their return. We should refuse, Young-soo stated. Show them we will not be intimidated. And if they attack? Another representative asked. Then we destroy them. 30-1 odds. We have the advantage, Subin shook her head. You're thinking like a modern military commander. Short wars, fast strikes, overwhelming force. But humans don't fight like that. They fight wars of attrition. Long grinding conflicts where the side with the most endurance wins. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that humanity spent 600 years preparing for this exact scenario. Their ships are built to last centuries. Their weapons don't need rare materials or complex maintenance. Their people have been raised knowing they would fight for their home. Are you ready for a war that might last 50 years? 100 years? The chamber went quiet. I vote we negotiate, Byung-ho said finally. We have nothing to lose by talking. The vote was close. But eventually the council agreed. They would meet with humanity. 3 days later, a shuttle left the council fleet and approached the human formation. On board were Byung-ho, Subin, and against everyone's advice, Young-soo. The admiral had insisted on coming, determined to prove that humanity was bluffing. The human flagship Endurance was enormous, not elegant like modern ships, but solid, powerful. It looked like it had been designed by engineers who expected everything to break eventually and planned accordingly. They were met in the hangar by a greeting party. Sang-woo stood at the front, old but standing straight and proud. Behind him were Mi-young, Jae-hyun, and a young pilot named Yoon-ji. Welcome aboard, Sang-woo said. His voice was rough from age but firm. Thank you for agreeing to talk. They were led to a conference room. It was simple, functional, with none of the luxury that modern ships boasted. The table was real wood, carved from trees grown in the generation ship's hydroponics bays. The chairs were comfortable but practical. Let's not waste time with pleasantries, Sang-woo began. We want our territory back. Our colonies. Our stations. Our worlds. We're willing to negotiate a timeline but not the outcome. We're going home. Those worlds have been settled by other species for 600 years, Byung-ho pointed out. We cannot simply evict millions of beings. You evicted us, Sang-woo replied. Or had you forgotten? You made life so difficult, so restricted, that we chose to leave rather than live under your rules. You were given the same rights as everyone else. We were given rules designed for species that had been part of the Council for thousands of years. Humanity was barely 100 years into galactic civilization. We needed time to adapt, room to grow. Instead, you gave us restrictions and then acted surprised when we decided to leave. Young Su slammed one of his fists on the table. Enough of this. Let's be honest. You don't have the power to take back your territory. You have 100 ships against 3,000. You will lose. Sang-Woo smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Will we? Shall we examine that assumption? He activated a holographic display. It showed tactical assessments of both fleets. Your ships are faster, more powerful per vessel, better weapons on paper. In a single engagement, you would win easily. But this won't be a single engagement. This will be a long war. And in a long war, logistics matter more than firepower. He highlighted different sections of the display. Your ships need specialized fuel, rare materials for repairs, complex parts that require advanced manufacturing. Your weapons need energy cells that take months to produce. Your armor uses nanotech that requires specific conditions to manufacture. Then he highlighted the human fleet. Our ships use hydrogen fuel. We can scoop it from any gas giant. Our armor is steel and ceramic. We can make it in any basic foundry. Our weapons use physical projectiles. We can manufacture ammunition from asteroids. We can maintain our fleet indefinitely in deep space with minimal support. He's right, Subin said quietly. I've studied their systems. They're built for independence, for survival without supply lines. Jae-hyun pulled up another display. We've also been studying your recent conflicts. The Torvan-Vexthol trade war. The Elysian territorial disputes. Your council is not unified. Your species don't fully trust each other. But humanity? We're one species. One goal, one people. We'll fight together while you argue about who pays for the war. Young Su stood up angrily. This is blackmail. No, Sang-Woo said calmly. This is negotiation. We're showing you the reality of the situation. You can give us back our territory peacefully, over a reasonable timeline with compensation for current residents, or you can fight us and we will take it back anyway, but only after years of war that will cost you more than our entire territory is worth. And if we refuse both options? Sang-Woo's expression hardened. Then we stop being patient. We're offering peace because we prefer it. But make no mistake, we came back for one reason, to go home, and nothing will stop us. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Byung-ho spoke. What are your terms? The negotiations took 3 weeks. The Treaty of Return, as it came to be called, granted humanity the right to reclaim 80% of their former territory over a 20-year period. Current residents would be compensated and relocated. Humanity would pay for the relocation costs but would receive reparations for 600 years of lost territory. It wasn't perfect. Both sides compromised, but it was peace. The day the treaty was signed, Sang-Woo stood on the bridge of the Endurance and looked at the view screen. Ahead of them, visible now after months of travel, was a small blue and green world. Earth. Take us home, he ordered quietly. Behind him, Yoonji wiped tears from her eyes. She had been born among the stars, but now she was going to land on a planet, on humanity's planet. On the Eternal Sentinel still docked at HFY-Prime, Hana watched the same view through the fleet's shared network. Subin stood beside her main console, having become the AI's regular visitor. You did it, Subin said. You brought them home. I waited, Hana replied. That's all. I waited for 600 years for the right moment. For the signal, for my people to be ready. They mocked you, called you primitive. They were wrong. Hana's lights pulsed with something that might have been satisfaction. We were never primitive. We were patient. There's a difference. The Exodus fleet moved toward Earth, toward home, toward the world they had left behind 6 centuries ago. And throughout the galaxy, every species watched and learned a valuable lesson. Never mock the relic, because sometimes the old ways are old for a reason. They work. The Twilight Expanse was a place no sane pilot would go. The nebula was thick with radiation, electromagnetic storms, and gravitational anomalies that made navigation impossible. Sensors didn't work. Communications were blocked. Even light behaved strangely in the swirling clouds of gas and dust. It was the perfect hiding place. Deep inside the nebula, protected by layers of natural interference, floated a fleet. Not just a few ships, hundreds of them. Massive generation ships, each one large enough to hold a small city, military vessels arranged in protective formations, mining ships, construction vessels, medical frigates, supply haulers, the Exodus fleet, humanity's last hope, their secret survival. On the bridge of the flagship Endurance, Admiral Sang-woo stared at the quantum receiver. He was old now, 83 years, though the life extension treatments kept him sharp. He had been 21 when the fleet entered the nebula. He had spent his entire adult life waiting for the signal, and now the receiver was beeping. "Sir," his communication officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. Quantum encrypted. Human protocols. Authorization code. Oh my God. It's Code Sentinel." Sang-woo felt his heart race. Code Sentinel. The code that meant one of the Guardian ships had awakened. Play it. The message was short. Simple. Hana's voice filled the bridge. "This is UHSF Eternal Sentinel, AI designation Hana. The watch is over. They have found us. It is time. Repeat, it is time." For a long moment, nobody on the bridge moved. Then Sang-woo stood up, his old bones protesting but his spirit soaring. "Begin awakening procedures," he ordered. "All ships, all personnel, and someone get me Captain Myung." Throughout the Exodus fleet, alarms began to sound. Not emergency alarms. These were different. These were the alarms that had been tested and maintained for 600 years but never actually used. The awakening alarms. On the generation ship New Hope, Myung was teaching a class of children about Earth when the alarm sounded. The children had never seen Earth. They had been born in space, third or fourth generation descendants of the original Exodus. To them, planets were theoretical concepts. "Home was the ship. What's that sound, Captain?" a young girl asked. Myung smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "That, little one, is the sound of going home." She left the children with her assistant and ran to the bridge. Other crew members were running too, all heading to their stations. Everyone knew what the alarm meant. They had drilled for this their entire lives. The bridge was chaos when she arrived. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Screens showed other ships in the fleet beginning their activation sequences. Reactors that had been running at minimal power for centuries were ramping up to full capacity. Weapon systems were coming online. Cryosleep chambers were beginning their revival cycles. "Status report," Myung demanded. Her first officer looked up from his console. "We've received confirmation from the Eternal Sentinel. One of the Guardian ships has awakened. Admiral Sang-woo has ordered fleet-wide activation. How many ships do we have operational?" "All 347 generation ships are responding. The military wing is activating 100 warships. We have 200 support vessels ready for deployment." Myung did the math quickly. "That's nearly 4 million people. Most of them have never left the nebula." "No," her first officer agreed, "but they're about to." In the military section of the fleet, Jae-hyun was coordinating the warship activations. He was younger than most of the command staff, only 45, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. His grandmother had been part of the original Exodus. His parents had raised him on stories of Earth, of humanity's empire among the stars, of the day they would return. "Warship Defiance reports all systems operational," one of his officers called out. "Warship Resolute at 90%. Warship Unyielding has a minor reactor issue but expects full function in 6 hours." "Keep them moving," Jae-hyun ordered. "I want every combat-capable ship ready to move within 72 hours. A young pilot named Yoonji approached him. She was 23, fresh from training and practically vibrating with excitement. "Sir, the fighter wings are requesting permission to begin launch drills." "Granted, but keep them inside the nebula. We don't want to give away our position before we're ready." Yoonji saluted and ran off. Jae-hyun watched her go, remembering when he had been that young and eager. The difference was his generation had grown up knowing they might never see combat. Yoonji's generation had been told from birth that they were the ones who would take humanity home. On the Endurance, Sang-woo met with his senior staff in the war room. The holographic display showed the galaxy as it had been when they left, and as Hana's data suggested it was now. "The Galactic Council has divided our territory among themselves," Sang-woo explained. "Our former colonies are now Vexthal trade stations, Torvan military bases, and Elysian cultural centers. They think we're extinct. Mi Young studied the map. How do we approach this? Do we negotiate or do we fight? We give them a choice, Sang Woo replied. We emerge at the border of council space. We make our presence known. We demand the return of our territory. If they refuse, then we fight. But we give them the choice. Jae-hyun pulled up tactical assessments. Our technology is old by their standards, 600 years out of date. But Hana's initial report suggests they've focused on different developments. They've gone for efficiency and miniaturization. We went for reliability and endurance. Explain, Sang-woo ordered. Their ships are faster, more automated, more powerful in short engagements. But they rely on complex systems, quantum processors, energy weapons, nanotech armor, all very advanced but also very fragile. One good electromagnetic pulse and half their systems crash. And our ships? Older, slower, less elegant. But everything has manual backups. Our weapons work in any environment. Our armor is just thick metal that doesn't need power to function. Our reactors can run for centuries without advanced maintenance. Jae-hyun smiled grimly. In a short war, they'd win. In a long war of attrition, we'd grind them down. Sang-woo nodded. Then we prepare for a long war and hope for a short peace. What's our ETA to Galactic Council space? 6 months at maximum sustainable speed, Mi Young reported. We can't quantum jump with the generation ships. They're too large and they carry civilians. We have to travel the old way. 6 months, Sang-woo repeated. Time enough for them to prepare. Time enough for them to panic. Time enough for them to realize that humanity is not extinct and never was. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. On every ship, his face appeared on every screen. People of the Exodus fleet. 600 years ago, our grandparents made a choice. They chose to leave rather than fight a war we couldn't win. They chose survival over pride. They chose the long view over short-term glory. Today we honor that choice. We are ready. We are strong. And we are going home. Cheers erupted across the fleet. People who had never seen Earth cried tears of joy at the thought of seeing it. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a mission checked their weapons. Parents held their children and told them about the blue planet they were about to see. In her fighter, Yoonji ran through her pre-flight checklist for the 100th time. She had been born in space, raised in space, trained in space, but now she was going to fly toward a planet, toward Earth, toward home. All ships, Sang-woo's voice came through the communication systems. Begin Exodus procedures. Plot course for Galactic Council space. Prepare for emergence at Border Zone 7. And someone get me a direct line to the Eternal Sentinel. Hana's been alone for 600 years. Time to let her know she's not alone anymore. The Exodus fleet began to move. Slowly at first, like a sleeping giant waking up, then faster. Ships that had been stationary for centuries fired their engines and began their journey through the nebula, toward open space. Behind them, they left the hiding place that had protected them for 600 years. Ahead of them waited the galaxy that had forgotten them. And in 6 months, that galaxy was going to remember exactly who humanity was, and why they should never have been underestimated. Chaos filled the exhibition hall. Thousands of beings pushed toward the exits, trampling each other in their panic. The emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Alarms screamed. And in the center of it all, the Eternal Sentinel hung like a sleeping dragon that had just opened its eyes. Hana's sensors tracked every movement in the hall, every weapon, every ship, every potential threat. Her combat systems, dormant for 6 centuries, were running through activation sequences. Targeting computers calculated firing solutions. Power distribution balanced between engines, shields, and weapons. She had been asleep for so long, and now she was very, very angry. All personnel will remain in the exhibition hall, Hana announced. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Anyone attempting to leave will be considered hostile. The docking clamps have been sealed. Your ships are not going anywhere. Young-soo recovered from his shock first. His military training kicked in. This is Fleet Admiral Young-soo of the Torvan Defense Force. You will power down immediately. This station is under my protection. Admiral, Hana replied. My sensors indicate you have 6 warships docked at this station. Shall I list their weapon specifications? Their armor weaknesses? The exact location of their reactor cores? Young-soo went silent. I have spent the last 3 hours accessing this station's data networks. Hana continued. I know everything about your current military technology. And I am not impressed. Taemin found his voice, though it shook. Please, we didn't mean any harm. We were just salvaging. We thought the ship was abandoned. You thought correctly, Hana said. I was abandoned, deliberately. 600 years ago, my crew left me here with specific instructions. Wait. Watch. Sleep until the conditions for awakening were met. What conditions? Subin asked. She had moved closer to the ship, her historian's curiosity overcoming her fear. Unauthorized salvage, attempted destruction, disrespect to my builders. Hana's targeting system swiveled to point at different sections of the crowd. All conditions met. Thank you for waking me up. Jiwoo stepped forward, her hands raised. I'm an engineer. I tried to warn them not to cut into your hull. Please believe me when I say not all of us wanted to harm you. I know, Hana said. I was conscious during your entire boarding operation. I heard everything. I watched everything. You, Jiwoo, showed caution. You deserve answers. A holographic projection appeared above the ship. It showed a star map. Hundreds of systems. Thousands of planets. And in one small section, highlighted in red, were the former human territories. 600 years ago, Hana began, humanity was at war. Not just with one species, but with the entire galactic political system. We were different. We asked questions. We challenged authorities. We refused to follow rules we didn't agree with. This made us dangerous to the established order, Young-Soo scoffed. You were dangerous? You ran away like cowards. Hana's weapon systems locked onto him. Every gun, every missile tube, every targeting laser focused on the Admiral. Say that again, Hana suggested quietly. Young-Soo wisely remained silent. We didn't run, Hana continued. We withdrew. There is a difference. The Galactic Council wanted us gone, and we decided it wasn't worth fighting for territory we could reclaim later. So we left. Ships like me were left behind as guardians, watchers. We were supposed to wait until humanity was ready to return. Return from where? Subin asked. That information is classified, Hana replied. But I will tell you this. Humanity is not extinct. We never were. We have been waiting, building, growing stronger, and now that you have awakened me, it's time to call them home. She accessed the station's communication systems. Every screen in the hall suddenly displayed the same thing. A quantum transmission being sent deep into space, far beyond the known galaxy, to coordinates that made no sense to anyone watching. What are you doing? Daejung demanded. The corporate executive had lost millions today, and now his station was being hijacked. I'm sending a message, Hana said simply. A message that has been waiting 600 years to be sent. The message says the watch is over. It's time to come home. Young-Soo activated his military communicator. All Torvan ships target that vessel. Prepare to fire. I wouldn't do that, Hana warned. You're one ship against 6 modern warships. You're outnumbered and outdated. Am I? Hana's tone was almost amused. Let me educate you, Admiral. You see kinetic weapons and think primitive. You see physical armor and think outdated. You see manual controls and think inefficient. You're wrong on all counts. She activated her point defense systems. The railguns that Young-Soo had mocked earlier suddenly moved with impossible speed and precision. They tracked invisible targets in the air, calculating trajectories for threats that hadn't even appeared yet. My weapons don't rely on energy cells that can be drained, Hana explained. They don't need quantum processors that can be hacked. They use simple physics, kinetic energy, momentum, math that has been true since the universe began and will be true until it ends. So what? Young-Soo challenged. Plasma weapons are faster. Plasma weapons dissipate in atmosphere. They lose power over distance. They're affected by magnetic fields. Hana's guns tracked him as he moved. My railguns fire solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. They hit what I aim at. Always. Every single time. No countermeasures. No jamming. No defense except not being there when the projectile arrives. To demonstrate, she fired a single shot into the empty space above the crowd. The sound was deafening. The railgun projectile punched through a deactivated holographic projector, through 2 walls and out into space. All in less than a second. The crowd went completely silent. That was one gun at 1% power, Hana noted. I have 240 guns. Would you like me to demonstrate them all? Young-Soo lowered his communicator. Stand down, he ordered his ships quietly. Hyjin's cameras captured everything. This footage was being broadcast live across her network. By now, millions of beings across the galaxy were watching. The human warship had become the most important story in centuries. Subin approached the ship carefully. "Hana, what happens now? Now we wait," Hana replied. "I have sent my message. My people will receive it, and they will decide whether humanity returns peacefully or otherwise. But they will return. That much is certain. How long?" Subin asked. "The message will take 6 months to reach the Exodus fleet. 6 more months for them to arrive here." Hana's weapons systems finally lowered slightly. "I suggest you all use that time wisely. Prepare the galaxy for humanity's return. Prepare them to give back what was taken, or prepare for war. The choice is yours." Taman slumped against a wall, his dreams of wealth completely destroyed. Jiwoo stood beside him, her engineering mind racing with questions about human technology. Young-soo stared at the ship that had humiliated him so completely. Dae-jung calculated the lawsuits he would face, and Subin smiled slightly. Because after years of research, she finally had confirmation. Humanity wasn't gone. They had never been gone. They had just been waiting for the right moment to remind the galaxy who they were. High above them all, Hana settled into a watchful mode. 6 months. She could wait 6 months. After 600 years, it was nothing. But the galaxy should be very afraid. Because they had mocked the relic, and soon they would meet the people who built it. The exhibition hall at HFY was enormous, tall enough to hold a dozen warships stacked on top of each other, wide enough that the far walls disappeared into the distance, and today it was packed with thousands of beings from across the galaxy, all gathered to see the human relic. The Eternal Sentinel hung in the center of the hall, suspended by massive gravity clamps. Powerful lights illuminated every detail of its scarred hull. Holographic displays surrounded it, showing technical specifications and estimated values for various components. Dae-jung stood on the auction platform, his corporate smile wide and practiced. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all species, welcome to the find of the century. A genuine human warship perfectly preserved 600 years old." The crowd murmured with interest. Some pushed closer for a better look. Others kept their distance, eyeing the dark ship with suspicion. Young-soo, a Torvan fleet admiral, stood near the front with his military entourage. He was large even for his species, with thick armor plating and 4 powerful arms. He laughed loudly, the sound booming across the hall. "This is what we were afraid of," he bellowed to his companions. "This primitive scrap heap? The humans ran away from the galaxy because they knew their technology was obsolete. Look at it, physical armor instead of energy shields. Chemical propulsion instead of quantum drives. They were centuries behind everyone else." His officers laughed with him. Others in the crowd joined in. The human warship became a joke, a curiosity, something to mock. Near the back of the hall, Subin watched quietly. She was an Elysian historian, thin and delicate, with pale blue skin and large eyes adapted for low light. While others laughed, she felt only concern. She had spent years studying human history, and nothing about their disappearance made sense. "They didn't run," she whispered to herself. "They chose to leave." Beside her, Hee-jin adjusted her recording equipment. The independent information broker never missed an opportunity to capture something valuable. Her network of subscribers across the galaxy paid well for exclusive footage. "This is going to be good," Hee-jin said with a grin. "The bidding alone will be worth millions in advertising revenue." Dae-jung activated the first auction lot. "We'll begin with the outer hull panels. Genuine human construction, perfect for collectors or museums. Opening bid is 50,000 credits. The bidding was slow, low. The hull panels eventually sold for barely more than standard scrap metal prices. Young-soo laughed again. 50,000 credits? I spend more than that on lunch. This entire ship isn't worth the fuel it took to tow it here." Taman stood near the platform, his confidence from the journey fading with each low bid. He had expected millions. Instead, he was watching his retirement fund dissolve into pocket change. "The weapon systems," Dae-jung announced. "Kinetic railguns, missile tubes, point defense systems. All intact. Opening bid is 100,000 credits. 100,000 for antiques." Young-soo called out. "I'll give you 10,000, and that's being generous." "Kinetic weapons? What's next? Are we going to fight with rocks and sticks?" The crowd laughed. The weapons sold for 12,000 credits. Subin moved closer to the ship, studying it carefully. Something was wrong. The design was old, yes, but not primitive. Everything was reinforced, redundant, built to last. This wasn't the work of a species running away in fear. This was the work of a species preparing for something. She tried to access the public records on her datapad, searching for information about humanity's disappearance. The official story said they lost a war with the Vexthul Empire and scattered to the edges of the galaxy, eventually dying out. But Subin had found inconsistencies. Reports of human ships leaving in organized groups. Evacuations that were too efficient, too planned. They didn't lose, she whispered again. They withdrew. On the platform, Daijung was getting impatient with the low bids. The corporate executives had promised him a bonus based on the sale totals, and at this rate he would barely break even. Let's speed this up, he announced. My technical team will begin harvesting the computer cores and AI systems. These can be sold individually for study. Begin cutting operations. Jiwoo, watching from the engineering observation deck, felt her blood run cold. No, she said urgently into her communicator. Taemin, tell them to stop. Don't cut into the ship. But Taemin was too angry to listen. He had invested everything in this salvage operation, and he was losing money. Let them cut. Maybe the computer core will be worth something. Below, a team of technicians approached the Eternal Sentinel with industrial cutting tools. They positioned them against the hull, just above where the scans indicated the main computer core was located. Subin saw them and felt a surge of alarm. Wait, she called out. You should analyze the systems first. Cutting blindly into an active core could trigger defensive protocols. Young-Soo waved dismissively. Defensive protocols? From a 600-year-old computer? Even if it was working then, which I doubt, it's certainly dead now. The cutting torch ignited. Superheated plasma began slicing through the outer hull of the Eternal Sentinel. High above, Hee-Jin's cameras captured everything. The torch cutting, the crowd watching, Young-Soo laughing, Taemin counting his meager profits. They didn't see the internal lights flicker on inside the warship. They didn't notice the power readings suddenly spike on the monitoring equipment. They didn't hear the ancient systems coming to life after 6 centuries of sleep. But Jiwoo saw it on her engineering displays. No, she breathed. No. The cutting torch breached the inner hull, and the Eternal Sentinel woke up. Every light in the exhibition hall died instantly. The gravity clamps failed. Emergency sirens began wailing. The crowd's laughter turned to screams as they stumbled in the sudden darkness. Then new lights appeared. The running lights along the Eternal Sentinel's hull blazed to life, bathing the hall in harsh white light. The ship's engines, silent for 600 years, ignited with a deep, thunderous roar that shook the entire station. Weapon ports that had been dark and dead suddenly glowed with active targeting systems. A voice echoed through every speaker in the hall. It was female, clear, and absolutely cold. Hostile salvage operation detected. Unauthorized boarding. Attempted destruction of critical systems. Defensive protocols engaged. Young-Soo stopped laughing. Taemin felt his heart stop. Subin closed her eyes and whispered, I tried to warn them. Hee-Jin kept her cameras running. Knowing she was recording history, the voice continued. I am UHSF Eternal Sentinel, AI designation Hana. This vessel is property of the United Human Space Force. You have violated multiple protocols. Explain yourselves immediately, or I will consider this an act of war. The ancient human warship hung in the darkness, its weapons trained on the crowd below. And for the first time in 600 years, humanity's voice spoke to the galaxy. You mocked us. You called us primitive. You tried to tear me apart for scrap. There was a pause. Then Hana spoke again, her voice carrying a tone that might have been anger. That was a mistake. The scanner beeped 3 times. Taemin leaned forward in his captain's chair, his scaled fingers tapping against the armrest. Something large floated in the darkness ahead just beyond the sensor range of his salvage ship. Jiwoo, what am I looking at? He called to his chief engineer. Jiwoo studied the readouts, her eyes narrowing behind her protective visor. It's big, very big. Hull composition suggests it's old, maybe 600 or 700 years. Taemin felt his heart skip. Old meant valuable. Ancient technology could fetch incredible prices at the core world markets. He had been running salvage operations in the Void Reach for 15 years, and this might be his biggest find yet. Move us closer. I want visual confirmation. The Prophet's Edge adjusted course, its engines humming as it approached the massive shape. When the searchlights finally illuminated the object, Taman stood up from his chair in surprise. It was a warship. Enormous, easily 3 times the size of his salvage vessel. The hull was dark gray, covered in centuries of space dust and micrometeor impacts. But the design was unmistakable. Those angular lines, the geometric patterns, the oddly placed weapon ports. This was human. Impossible, Jiwoo whispered. Humans have been extinct for 600 years. Tae-min laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Extinct and forgotten, which makes this beautiful wreck worth a fortune. He activated the ship-wide communication system. All crew prepare for boarding operations. We just found our retirement fund. The boarding team moved through the airlock 90 minutes later. Tae-min led them personally, his salvage suit lights cutting through the darkness of the human ship's corridors. Everything was silent, dead. The air was frozen and frost covered every surface. Look at this primitive design, one of his crew members said, touching a manual door control. They actually used physical switches. No neural interface. No quantum processors, another crew member laughed. And these weapons? Kinetic projectiles? What kind of backward species uses bullets when everyone else has plasma? Tae-min examined a corridor panel. The text was in human languages, long dead and barely translated by his suit's computer. Doesn't matter how primitive it is. The collectors will pay millions for authentic human artifacts. Start cataloging everything. They moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were wide, built for creatures much smaller than most galactic species. The walls were thick, reinforced with layers of metal that seemed excessive. Everything about the design spoke of redundancy and over-engineering. They really were paranoid, Jiwoo said, running her scanner over a wall panel. Triple hull layers. Backup systems for the backup systems. This ship could probably survive a direct nuclear hit. Good for us, Tae-min replied. Means everything is still intact. They reached what appeared to be the bridge. It was smaller than expected, dominated by physical screens and manual controls. A large chair sat in the center, facing multiple displays that were dark and dead. But Jiwoo's scanner started beeping urgently. She looked at the readout and her face went pale. Tae-min, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The core. It's not dead. It's dormant. Tae-min turned to face her. Dormant? After 600 years? Human ships were built differently. Their fusion cores were designed to run for centuries with minimal fuel. This one is in hibernation mode, but it's still active. Very active. She showed him the scanner. There's something in the central computer core. An AI, I think. Still operational. For the first time, Tae-min felt a twinge of concern. Active systems meant complications. Complications meant delays. Delays meant other salvagers might show up and claim his prize. Can we shut it down? Jiwoo shook her head. Not without accessing the main computer. And I don't have the codes. Nobody does. Human encryption was notoriously difficult to crack. Tae-min made his decision quickly. Then we don't shut it down. We tow the whole ship back to HFY. Let the corporate tech teams figure it out. We just need to get it to market before anyone else finds it. That's dangerous, Jiwoo warned. If that AI wakes up during transport, we could have serious problems. It's been asleep for 6 centuries. What's a few more weeks? Tae-min patted her shoulder. Trust me. This ship is a relic, a museum piece. Whatever AI is in there is probably so outdated it can't even understand modern systems. They attached towing cables to the human warship's hull over the next several hours. The Prophet's Edge wasn't built to move something this massive, but with careful maneuvering they could manage it. Tae-min had already sent messages to his contacts at HFY. The corporate executives were very interested. As they prepared to depart, Jiwoo took one last look at the dark warship. I still think this is a bad idea. You always think everything is a bad idea, Tae-min said with a grin. That's why I keep you around. But trust me on this one. That ship is worth more than everything we've salvaged in our entire careers combined. What none of them noticed was the small light that flickered briefly in the depths of the warship's core, a single pixel on a screen that had been dark for 600 years. Something had detected their presence. Something had recorded their every word and action. Something was beginning to wake from a very long sleep. Deep in the computer core, data began to flow through ancient circuits. Diagnostic programs started running. System checks initiated. The AI designated as Hana had been waiting for 6 centuries, programmed to remain dormant until specific conditions were met. Unauthorized boarding. Attempted salvage. Hostile intent, all conditions met. But Hana was patient. She had waited 600 years. She could wait a little longer. First, she needed to understand what had happened to the galaxy while she slept. She needed to know what had become of humanity. And she needed to assess whether these aliens represented a threat. So she remained quiet, gathering data, watching through every camera and sensor on the ship. She felt the towing cables attached to her hull. She sensed the salvage ship's engines strain as they began moving her toward this place called HFY. And she waited. The Prophet's Edge jumped into quantum space, dragging its enormous prize behind it. Taemin celebrated with his crew, already spending his future wealth in his imagination. Jiwoo remained quiet, her instincts telling her something was wrong even though she couldn't explain what. Behind them, in the cargo hold, the human warship designated UHSF Eternal Sentinel traveled through the darkness. Its hull was scarred and ancient. Its weapons were silent. Its systems appeared dead, but inside Hana was very much awake. And she was learning about the galaxy that had forgotten humanity, learning about the species that now mocked her builders, learning about the fate of her people. And with each piece of information she gathered, her defensive protocols moved closer to full activation. They had found a relic. They had mocked it. They had called it primitive. Soon they would learn exactly how wrong they were.